All right, everyone. Well, welcome to my presentation here. I'm Matey. It's a beginner's guide to advanced mating. See, I'm not dressed up like a pirate or anything, but if anyone has any good pirate puns or anything, please feel free to shout them out. But I see some familiar faces out here, but those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Ryan Field. I'm an application engineer with Go Engineer. I've been in the reseller channel for 8 years now. Also had my lead AE, got it about 5 years ago in 2018. I'm based out of Cleveland, Ohio. Live there, my wife and our 2 young kids. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So, glad I didn't see anyone dressed up like pirates here today, but that's a good sign. But so why that theme? Like, why did I come up with that theme? One, mates, of course, right? And my kids are young and they like dressing up like pirates and making treasure maps, and we have treasure chests and stuff like that. But that phrase, aye, it's something the crew member says to the captain, right? Meaning, I will get that done right away, right? And when thinking of assemblies, right, when I think of them, that's something that comes to mind, right? We want to get them done right away. Our bosses want us to get them done right away because, once those assemblies are put together and we have them constructed, right, they can be really powerful, right? There's a lot of good information that we can glean from there for our designs, right? Doing things like interference detection, evaluating for clearances, collisions, right? Stuff like that, just to name a few, right? But that's what we're going to look at here today, right? Some different methods, some different mating tools that we have available to us to help us just more efficiently put our assemblies together, right? To help us get to that end goal that we have, right? That's to get that fully assembled, model, so we can go in and start evaluating it, right? So since we're sticking with the pirate theme here, how do they get to their end goal, right? The treasure map, right? So as we're working here towards our end goal, right, the couple categories that we're going to go through here this morning, we're going to look at here today. So the first one here is those standard mates, right, that we use all the time. But we're going to look at some different, more efficient ways that we can use those. The next, when standard mates, aren't quite enough, right? Those standard coincident and stuff like that. We'll look at some of the advanced mates that we have available to us. And then finally look at some of the more innovative mating tools that have been added over the years, namely the mate controller and magnetic mates, right? That they can help us within our projects, depending on what we're doing, right? Okay. So let's start off here with just efficiently adding our mates. So we all know, right, how to do this, right? We could go up to the command manager, you select on the paper clip, right, and then all those standard mates we know and we use all the time, things like coincident, concentric, perpendicular, stuff like that. But it's a lot of steps, right? Go up there, click on it, go through that. But that's what we want to talk about right now in this first section is just how can we more efficiently add those mates, right? We're really got through 3 different topics that we can do that. The first one is with the context toolbar, utilizing quick mates. Then another way of creating some of those standard mates is something called smart mates. And then the third category here is taking that one step further and then building those in with something called mate references. So go ahead and just jump into SolidWorks here, and here's our first pirate themed model that I got. And we have our pirate's cannon, right? So you can see most of the components here are already mated up, but we have a few that still need some mates, right? Some basic coincident and concentric mates there. And we're gonna add those different mating techniques that we just talked about, right? But first off, we're just gonna do that through the standard traditional way, right? Going up into the command manager there, selecting on the mate command. In there, right, we have those different tabs, right, that just help us sort through the different mating categories real easily, kind of get through those different types that we have. So on the standard tab there, right, we go ahead, just make our first selection. And when we do that, right, the first part goes transparent. What's really nice about that, right, is, we can go ahead and select through that, right? So if there's like components that are not there that we want, right, we can select through there. So once we do make our 2 selections, right, we get that menu bar that pops up here. Good job of guessing, does a good job of guessing what it is that we want, right? You can switch that if you want, but there's the concentric there is what we wanted based off of our selections, right? Then we can choose that if we need to, move on. And then when we go ahead in and say, okay, right, it gets added over here into our property manager. So now we can go over and just start making our next selections for our next mate, right? Which here we're going to do the coincident mate. And you can see, right, our first selection goes transparent again. And again, does a good job of guessing which one we want to use there. Then accept out of there. So that first selection, it goes transparent. That isn't actually, it's a really nice tool, but if you don't like that, you can actually turn that off. That is an option that you can turn off. So it's over in the mate property manager down at the bottom. You can check off that option to make first selection transparent. So if you don't like that, you can turn that off. All right, so that was kind of just a quick overview, right? And that's pretty easy, right, to do. We all know how to do that, but it's a lot of movement, right? A lot of picks and clicks, right, to do that. So let's go ahead and just do it again with the first method here. We're going to use the context menu, and quick mates. So basically what we're doing here is we're pre-selecting what we want. So here, right, for our concentric mate, right, I'm going to hold down Control and then make my selections. And when you let go of Control, that quick mates toolbar pops up with the different mate options that are available based off of the selections that we made. Again, the concentric one's highlighted there, but if you want to change that, that's fine. You can pick one of the other ones. So I'll choose concentric, and then we have that ability there to that little pop-up to lock the rotation or flip that mate alignment. If you move away from that, that'll disappear, right? Assuming you're good. So that is actually, if you guys are using context menu and you're on an older version of SOLIDWORKS, that is something that was new in 2022, and then it was actually updated in one of the later service packs to make it even better. But that's actually an option you can change also if you want. So if you want to go back to that old way, right, you just right-click on the command manager. You can remove that just by unchecking that option to show flip alignment and lock rotation after quick mates, or turn it on, right, if it was off. You can also, which I hope no one does this, I shouldn't even tell you, but you can turn quick mates off completely if you don't like those at all. You can turn those off. All right, so coming back in, right, to go ahead in and our next coincident mate here, we're going to use what I think is a pretty underutilized tool, but it's called the component preview window. Is anyone familiar with that? Got a few, right? So to activate that, right, I'm just going to go ahead in and click on the component, and we choose that little option there, and it's going to open up that selection, our selection over there, like in a separate window, where we can freely move that around, right, without moving the whole assembly, which is really nice. So you can see if I make a selection over in the main assembly, or either way, right, it selects it in the main assembly as well, right, from over there. So I'm going to go ahead and use that to add that quick mate, right? So I'm just going to go ahead in for that coincident mate here. So I made my first selection there in the main assembly. Right, I can make that other selection over there in the component preview window. Again, when you let go of Control, just like before, right, I can choose the option that I want. And then when we're done, right, just exit out of the component preview window.
When was this feature added?
That's been a while. As far as I know, that's always been around. At least a really long time that's been there.
And when you mouse over to that component section, it rotates only that component section and not the main assembly?
It only rotates what's in that window over there. So it's nice if you have something already locked down, right, and you'd have to rotate the whole thing to get to that backside. Yep, it's just what's in there. Now we talked about, we had that option to lock rotation if we wanted. Let's see, we skipped ahead there. Oh. Here, sorry, actually, let's go back because that's kind of an important one there. I like this. So the locking rotation, right? We talked about how we had that checkbox there, but we didn't do it. We could do it after the fact if we want, right? And what this is all about is not moving everywhere, right, more efficiently. So you could come all the way over here, right? Come down in the mate folder and lock that, right, if you need to. Just lock the rotation. But we're going to do something a little different. We're going to use something called breadcrumbs. So what breadcrumbs are, it's basically a hierarchy of the selection that you make. So you see there, I selected a face of that wheel, right? And then there's the face, right? And then it's working its way up, right? We have the feature, then the body, then the part, right? And then the assembly and so on, right? All just right there at your fingertips. Then along the way, right, it's more than just that. We have access to the different options of those. Like there's the sketch that was used to create the feature. Selecting the part, right? There's the mates that are associated with it. The reference geometry for that, and so on, right? So from here, right, I can just select the mate, right? Edit that, then lock the rotation, right? Without having to go over into the mate folder, right? And finding the mate and locking it down that way. Anyone use breadcrumbs? I like those a lot. Those have been around only for, I think, maybe like 4 or 5 years now, but pretty cool. All right, so moving over to the next set of wheels here. We're going to apply these mates. This time we use smart mates. So we do that, actually, there's a couple different ways that we can do that. And the first one, we're gonna go ahead and open up the wheel. Then first thing we do is just tile those windows open. And from here, for smart mates, I essentially just go ahead and make my first selection over here, and then just drag it over, and it's gonna look for something to mate to. Right, so as I'm dragging it across, right, since there I'm grabbing that planar face, right, it's looking for other faces to apply that coincident mate to. Right, so I can do that with, you can see those two planes, right, that's basically the gonna add the coincident mate. You can do it with a cylindrical face as well, right? For looking for something to be concentric to, right? You can see that symbol there looks like 2 cylinders on an axis. Now, what's really cool about these with the smart mates is here we have that case, and pretty common, right, case where we want it to be coincident to the face and then concentric to the shaft, right? We want to do both of those things. So what I'm going to do is select that edge and then just drag that over. And as I drag that over close to that edge into that face, right, you can see this time we have that new symbol that looks like a shaft going into a hole there. So if I drop that on there, that was able to apply both those mates at once, right? So you apply that coincident and concentric, right? So coming back over just into the main model here, right? We use breadcrumbs, right? I'll select on my breadcrumbs, right? You can see it added both of those mates for us just by dragging that over. So that's one way of being able to see mates for each of these components. Go through the breadcrumbs and look at that. But there's other ways, right, from in the assembly there of doing that. And one of those methods is we can select on the component and choose that paper clip with the eyeball there to view mates. So from here, what we get is a list of the mates that are associated with that component, right? And then the component and the components that are associated with it with mates are isolated, and they show up there as transparent. So you can select on those, right, and get access to those mates, right from there. You can also select multiple components and choose the View Mates option as well from there, and see all those mates that are associated with those. Another method for viewing those, right, if you want, is you can select on a component and go over into the Property Manager and see the mates that are associated with that component. And if you select multiple components, we get that list as well, but the ones that are shared will show up as bolded, which is nice. All right, so coming over to this last wheel here. This one's already in the model, so we want to still use those smart mates. So again, if we just drag that around, right, of course it's not gonna mate to anything, we're just freely just dragging that around. But we can activate the smart mates. And we can do that utilizing the Alt key. So we use Control, right, to do the quick mates. Smart mates, we can use the Alt key. So here I want to do that same thing. I want to use that edge to apply both, so we can apply both those mates at once, right? So I'm going to select that edge and hold down Alt and start dragging it around. Once you start moving that component, it turns transparent. And you can see that the paper clip shows up. It turns transparent. Once that happens, Smart Mate's been activated. You can let go of Alt if you want. Then, as you start moving it around, right, it's looking for something to mate to. As you get close, right, you can see that peg and hole option pops up, right? Drag and drop that on, right? So we easily apply both of those mates. Okay, so 3 of those wheels can still rotate, right? We locked down the one already. And of course, we can go over and individually do it like we talked about, or go through breadcrumbs like we showed earlier. We can also just right-click on the mates folder and choose Lock Rotation. And what that'll do, it'll lock the rotation of all the concentric mates that can still spin. A kind of nice way of being able to, if you want to fully lock those down, you can do that. All right, so lastly, in this section here, this handle we want to add. This one's basically the same mates that we've had for the wheels, and we could apply any of those methods that we just did. And we want to do that like peg and hole option again here. But this is a part we use all the time, right? So, using it in other designs. So what we can do is we can go ahead and build that directly in. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up that part first and build that into this file. And under references, I'm going to go up and add what's called a mate reference. So in here, you can see we have different mate types that you can choose from. There's a few in that list. You can also have different alignments that you can define, and also up to 3 different entities, right, that you can define right within this one mate reference. But for this case that we have, I'm just going to leave those alone as they are. I'm going to go over and select that edge, right, and we're going to use that to define our mate reference. So when I select on that, right, I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And what we've done here now is we've added this as a mate reference in this component. Right, there's that folder there, and you can see that mate reference is added into the part. So what's really nice about these is I'm going to just go ahead and save this out, right, and close it. And I don't even have to have the model open now, right? So we'll come in here. I'm going to go ahead and just close that out. And we're going to go over just to File Explorer and just grab that handle. And if I drag it over, it's just looking for something to mate to, utilizing that mate reference that we defined in the part. So it's a really nice way to just quickly add those components that you, like those standard parts, right, that you use all the time. Is there any toolbox users out there? Use SOLIDWORKS Toolbox? You drag those in and they snap into place. That's what the toolbox. If you look at your toolbox parts, they got that mate references folder there. But you can build those into other components as well.
So I got a question about lock mates.
Okay.
Is it better to use a lock mate as opposed to mating the plane of the part?
Well, that's just adding another mate. I guess that gives you more control, I guess, on where, you're locked down. But
OCD and we want to see the references lined up.
say that again?
It's because we're all OCD and we all see stuff at 90 degrees.
Yeah. I guess that way you'd have to do it that way.
I want to say when you locked it, it
Flipped
flipped
it to what? To add a And it might, you know what? I don't know if it might just. I think it just does it in the position that it was in. Not 100% sure on that, but yeah, I guess if you want to.
Yeah, you look at it and you're like, well, maybe that's not fully locked
Yeah. Well, that's with the plus sign right next to the. Yep. Okay. But yes, I know exactly what you mean, and I'm very OCD about that too. All right. So just a quick recap of what we talked about here in this first section, right? First, the context toolbar, right? Utilizing the control key, right? We can do our pre-select, our selections, and then that menu pops up based off of the selections that we chose. Next, right, those smart mates, we can, saw there we can automate sort of adding some of those standard mates, right? Either by dragging it in from an outside of the document or utilizing the Alt key, right, if you're right inside the assembly, right? The really nice one there is that peg and hole option, right, where you can add the 2 mates at once. And then taking that one step further, right, with mate references, where we can build those directly in, right, to the parts, right, for those common components that we have. Or we don't even have to have the file open, right? We can just drag that in. Yeah.
I have a question about that mate reference.
Yeah.
Did you have to name the main reference that you create with the same name of the main reference in the part that you're gonna make?
No, did it have to have, so yeah, the assembly didn't have anything with a mate reference. There are ways you can do that with, naming them, snapping into other components, but what that was doing is almost like just the same thing as the smart mates, just not having it open, right? It was just built in, so it just knew, with the smart mates, we just grabbed an edge and it's looking for that edge to mate to. Where we're basically defining it in that part, so it's almost like that one is select, and it's looking for that to mate to.
But for instance, if you have 100 parts that look the same or when you bring the part, don't make that difficult that goes to the site that you want to be made.
Well,
For instance, I
But it's just the same, like a common component you're bringing in to go to those other different places. Yeah, well, it should be the closer one you get to is the one it should snap into. I think as you drag that in, yeah, it's looking. I think you should be able to move it around, like and to the one that you want, right? To the hole that you want. Yeah. So just a few of the other efficiency tools that we saw there, right? Breadcrumbs. I didn't see any hands go up. Hopefully, some people didn't want to raise their hands, right? And they're using those, but they're not just for mates, right? There's that hierarchy of the selection that we made, right? It just gives you access to a lot of things, right there at your fingertips. Again, if you're not using those, I highly recommend giving it a try. Take a little bit of time getting used to, maybe. And I was a little iffy on them at first, but I love those. I think they're awesome, right? It keeps you right at your mouse, right? You're working there. I think it's a system option where you can turn them off, or you can have it be up in the corner and then only come down to your mouse. I think it's D, if you want it, when you want to use them. So there are some options in there on how they're set up. That component preview window, right? Great way to access those hard to reach faces, right? Maybe without having to break mates, move things around, stuff like that. The command manager, that's going to be a common theme here, right? We don't need to go up into the command manager, right? Go all the way up there, select on that to add these mates, right? We can access those a lot better ways without having to do all that mouse travel and getting to those. Okay, so on to our second topic here. So we're going to talk about some of those advanced mates. So that's that next tab, right, over in the property manager there. And we're going to talk about a few of these different ones here today. We're going to talk about the profile center mate, the width mate, limit mates, and the slot mate. Now, slot mate's technically over on the mechanical tab, but we're going to talk about that here too. So first off, the profile center mate. What that one does is that's going to center align geometric profiles. So looking at some of the examples here, right, it's generally circular or rectangular profiles. You can see some of them there, like have some holes in them, stuff like that. The group on the left, the four on the left are the ones that you can use, the profile center mate. The ones on the right are not, right? You can see there's like some have like chunks out of them and like an L angle there, right? Those, you can't do the profile center mate. So generally circular and rectangular profiles. The width mate, what that's going to do is basically constrain a tab between planar faces in that direction. And then we'll have some different constraint options that we can do there, which is pretty cool. Limit mates, right, constrains our movement, right, within a value that we can set. And the slot mate, right, constrains that movement within a slot, kind of like a bolt, right? It could be a straight or it could be an arced slot there. Okay, jumping back into SolidWorks, here our next model, right? We have our parts telescope here. Can use to scope out as competition, something. But we want to apply those advanced mates that we just talked about. And the first thing we want to do is center that post on that base plate, and we're going to utilize the width mate. So you can see it's already concentric, right? But we want to center it in that vertical direction. So to activate the mates, this time instead of going up to the command manager, I'm just going to use the S key, right? Hit the S key just to activate the mates that way, have it right on my menu there. So now over on the advanced tab, and choosing the width mate, I have two fields to fill in here, the width selections and the tab selections. So for the width mate, or for the width, I'm going to choose for the width option there, I'm going to choose the two faces of the posts. And then for the tab, the two outer faces of that base plate there. So now you can see what it's doing is it's like centering that based off of the selections that we made. And then it's centered, but we do have some other constraint options that we can do within there. So we can set it to free, which I really like that one. Right, and that's going to essentially allow it to move back and forth between the selections that we made. We can also define an offset. You can do that by either a dimension or a percent. With 50%, it's going to be the center there. And we can flip that direction in which the offset's defined. So what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and I want it to be centered because I want that to move up and down. Or sorry, I'm going to set it to free so we can, that can move up and down there. All right, so next thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and delete that mate out, utilizing our breadcrumbs, because that with mate is actually available within the quick mates as well, like we did in that last section. So we're gonna go ahead and just re-add it that way. So again, utilizing control, I'm gonna go ahead and select my 4 faces. What's nice here is the order didn't matter, right? I'm just going around using control, selecting those 4 faces there. So when I finish, I let go of control. Based off of the 4 planar faces that we've selected, the only option available, right, is the with mate. Or I can select that, right? I can flip my mate alignment. I can choose my constraint option just right from there. So I'm gonna go ahead and set it to free, right? And we've easily added that mate in without having to go up into the property manager and doing it that way. All right. Next thing we want to do is center those rectangular profiles of that base plate there and that base mount. And we're going to use the profile center mate to do that one. So again, using the S key, right? And over on the advanced tab, choosing profile center, I'm going to choose our 2 rectangular profiles there. And you can see what it did is it center aligned those, right, in the 2 directions there and kind of mounted those up. You can change that offset distance, right? It's 0 right now, so they're touching, but you can put an offset there if you need to. You can even flip that dimension if you want. And then you can even change that orientation too, if you need to. So the nice thing here, right, is since we center align those profiles, like if one of those plates gets bigger or wider, we're going to maintain that center alignment there. That's a really cool mate. Great question. I don't know. Yeah, but it's not the chunk out. That's not one that's available. It's a great question. Not sure what would happen there. We attempt the end. We can jump in and try to do that. Yeah. All right. Next, you might remember from when we were looking at those profiles, right? The circular profiles available as well. The profile center mate. And the profile center mate is also available on the quick mates. So here, I'm going to go in and just control select those 2 circular profiles and apply the profile center mate. So we can change that offset distance. We can even lock the rotation there. And we've easily added that profile center mate in there. So what's really nice about that is you can fully define like a bolt with just one mate, right? Choosing the profile center mate, locking the rotation, right, and fully define that bolt there. All right, the next mate we're going to look at here, let's do that slot mate, right? So we're trying to see the motion that we have, and it's a little bit difficult, right, because we have a lot of motion, right, in this assembly, a lot of like cantilever arms out there, some rotation stuff. So we have a tool that can help us sort of isolate that. It's called the temporary fixed group. So you just right click, choose that option, and you can choose the components that we want to fix. So picked a couple of those there and fixed that. We can now more easily see that rotation or that like motion that we have there. You can see it's already concentric, right, up around that knob there. But what we want to do though is define a slot mate between that post and then that arced slot there. So again, utilizing our S key, and this time we'll go over on the mechanical tab, choosing the slot mate, and going ahead and making our selections, right? I'm going to choose that face of the arced slot, and then the cylindrical face of that post there. And here, similar to the with mate, a little bit different wording, but we have those 4 constraint options here as well, where we can choose to set it to be free, we can center it, or we can define, again, an offset either by a dimension or by a %. I'm going to go ahead and just set that to free. Again, you can lock the rotation there if you need to, then say OK. And right now we're going to use that temporary fixed group again. It's a really useful tool. You can see now we have that mate added in there, right? And you can see we're now defined within that slot, right? That post is defined within the slot there. All right, so you've probably noticed a theme here in this section. The slot mate is also available with the quick mates. All right, so I'm gonna just go ahead and we'll just delete that out again just to show that. And we're gonna re-add that again with quick mates. So I'm just, again, holding down Control, making our selections. All right, we can apply our slot mate right from there. You can lock the rotation, flip that alignment, even choose the constraint option, right? Those constraint options as well, and just exit out of there. So with the slot mate, that default constraint option is actually a document property that you can set, or you can change, I should say. So just under document properties, under mates, you can define what that default constraint is for the slot mate. All right, last mate here in this section that we want to look at is the limit angle mate. So we can utilize that temporary fixed group option again here, and so we can kind of just get it close to where we want to do the mate. So go ahead and lock that down, and then just rotate it around. Right, good practice, right, to kind of be close. Does a pretty good job of mating it how we want, but getting it, there's sometimes different options, right, that it can be. Right, so we're going to get it close there. And exit out of there. And the limit angle mate is also available within the quick mates. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead in and do that. Just do that for this option here. Again, using Control, make our selections. Right, we can come in and we have, you can see also there the distance, the limit distance, the angle, the limit angle. Those are all on there as well. We can choose what option we want. Here, you can then set the value for that limit angle, right? Then the maximum and minimum values as well. All right, saying OK out of there. Again, we can look at that as well, right? We're utilizing that, again, that really handy temporary fixed group, right? We can kind of see that limit angle mate that we've added in. All right, so if you want to change those values, a couple ways, right, to do that. Coming over into the mate folder, right, we can double-click on the limit angle mate, then double-click on the value, and we can change that value, the min and max values right from there. What we can also do is, those breadcrumbs, right? We can utilize breadcrumbs, activate the mate, go over into the mate property manager, right, to modify the limit angle mate that way as well. Here, we also have the ability to add what's called a reference entity. We can manually do that, or you can let SOLIDWORKS select that for you. Right? Because sometimes, angle mates can flip unexpectedly, right? But with that, selecting one of those, that can help control that. There's also this quadrant selector in there in the middle, which should allow you to pick between different quadrants for how you want to define that angle. It's not quite working right now. There is an SPR that's created for that. But making that first selection up there should help with aligning with those mate alignments flipping.
Good question. Let's say you have 2 or 3 mates that are like the percent along, or it's a certain travel number.
Okay.
Is there a way to quickly manipulate 2 or 3 of those sort of at the same time? And if you want to see how an arm is moving or this telescope is moving at once.
Our next section. I think might answer that. Okay. So just a quick recap here, right? Those 4 mate types that we talked about. The profile center, center aligning those geometric profiles. The cool thing is we have that ability we can fully define within that one mate. The width mate, right? Constraining the tab between 2 planar faces in the width mate. Have those multiple constraint options. On the profile center, you can kind of almost think of that too, like, seeing how the width works, it's almost like a width this way, and the coincident or the distance this way. So it's doing a lot within that one mate there. The limit mates, right, those could be linear, angular, right, we define our range. And then with the slot, right, containing the feature, right, with the slot, right, the wording is a little different, but those similar constraint options there. And again, I want to stress this one, don't need to go up into the command manager, right? You can use the S key, right, to access those mates if you get into those. And then depending on what release of SOLIDWORKS you're on, all of those ones we talked about here, just available right on quick mates. Actually, we didn't go with symmetry and cam, those are on there as well. A couple of those have been added over the last couple years, but it was a few years ago, so if you're on at least like 22, maybe even 21, all of those are on there. Okay, so moving on to that next section, our last section here. Moving on in our journey, right, we have these newer-ish, more innovative tools that we're going to talk about. And not too new, I guess they've been around for several years now. But they can be very specific for certain types of applications. But if they can be utilized in what you're doing, they can be pretty powerful, pretty cool tools. And those are the mate controller and magnetic mates. So we'll start with the mate controller here. And what that is, as you can see from this little video here, the mate controller, it's like an easy way to create motion based off of the mates that we want to, or that we have defined. So like similar to what we had with that telescope, right? It was, you start having those assemblies with lots of motion there, it's kind of hard to control, right? Or to isolate and kind of see those different things. So the mate controller can kind of help us do that. Let's go ahead in and take a look. And for our next model here, I'm going to use our imagination on the pirate theme, but this is our pirate's cannonball loader. He's a high-tech pirate. But you can see, right, it has some rotations, it's got some like extensions there, and we're going to use the mate controller to kind of show that motion, right? So I'm going to go ahead in and search for the command, but in a little bit different location. Here, I'm just going to hit the S key, and now I can just start searching right from there, right? I just start typing, hit S to start typing the command that I want. And right from there, you can insert the command, you can show its location, or I can even access the command right from there. So it's the same thing. Everyone, I hope, uses that powerful search command up there. It's the same thing, it's just now you can hit S and just start typing. That's still there too, but you can just do it right there at your mouse. All right, so now what I can do is I can just now that we're in the command, I can just start selecting the mates that I want to add. I can manually add those in if you want. You can go select those. Or you can let SOLIDWORKS just do that for you. So by choosing this option here, it can add all of the supported mates for you. So when we get our list here that shows up, we can move those around if you want. And moving those around is essentially up and down there is essentially how they're going to show up down here in the next part we're going to talk about it, the mate positions. So moving down here, right, we can see I have the different mates, right, and their values are shown up there. And we can just create our different positions now that we have. So now it's kind of best practice here to have no changes in our first and last position. So I'm just going to go ahead in and create an X position. And we'll change our first value, right? And then we can go in, change your value, update the position. And then we can go in and just, create our next positions from there. You can use just the generic name, right, if you want, or, give it something more meaningful, right? And then we update the next values and then update the position as well. So you can see, we always talk about renaming mates or your dimensions and properties, right? This is one of those good places where that can be handy, right? Where these mate names are there, or the different positions, to give you a better idea of what it is than just kind of this generic sequential, naming. Then we can just do that workflow, work through our workflow there, and just modify each of those different positions. So you see here, just what I've been doing here so far has just been updating one position at a time, but it doesn't have to be that, right? You can do multiple, or I should say, each mate. I'm only doing one mate per position there, but you can go in and do multiple mates per position if you want to show that there. And here, right, what we're showing is, right, it's the motion, right, of the coming down, scooping the cannon, right, and then going to be rotating it over and dropping it in. So we're going to move it over there, and then go ahead and add our last mate here, our last position. And for the last position, you can see it's actually a limit angle mate. So we can enter that value in if you want, or you can, there's a slider there, or you can kind of slide that if need be, right, to kind of position that or type in the value, right, if you want. So to enter in the value and update that position, there is also, we have to have the ability to add a configuration of the position if you want. So if you need to just click on the button there, you can add the configuration. And something else I like to do, especially in like a model like this, right? I want to create a position at the end that's equal to that beginning position. So right that way we can show the motion going all the way down and then just going back to the beginning there. So that one actually had all the mates changing in the first in one, right? Because it's just going from that last position and taking everything back to the beginning there. All right, so once we have all of our positions set up, we can come down here into the animations section. And you can see what it has all our positions there. And then the time it's going to take to go from position to position. So we can go in and update those as needed, right, if you want to change those times. And then from there, right, you can go in and calculate that animation. And it'll go through the different steps there, position by position, right, with the times that we have defined.
Can you pause it during one of those states of those positions, or is it always continuously moving?
It continuously goes through that step there, I don't think. But what we can do is what we're going to see here is we can save that. So yeah, I don't think, because what that's doing is it's calculating the animation. That step is calculating that animation. Is there a pause button in there? Yeah, there might be a pause. Yeah, there's a stop. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't think it's quite the keyframe editing like that. But, well, actually what we're going to see next, though, too, might help us. That is well, the next step here. But first thing we can do is we have the ability to save that animation out. So we can save that in a variety of different file types, right? There's AVI, MKV, MP4, right? We can save that file out. So you need to share that with customers, right? Share that, internally, right? To see that motion there. And then once we're done, I'm going to just exit the make controller command, and that's been added as a feature over here in the feature tree, right? Where we can go in, edit that if you need to. We also have the ability to, and this might help you or answer your questions, the ability to take that and import it into a motion study. So down here, we can see the different mates. We can bring that in through the animation wizard, right? So where you can choose the make controller, to bring that in, and you can utilizing the key points there. And then, is there anyone that is SOLIDWORKS Visualize Professional users? Okay. Anyone use Visualize Standard? Does everyone know if you have SOLIDWORKS Professional or Premium and on subscription you actually have Visualize Standard? Okay. So the Professional version, one of the features that Professional has is animations. And you can take motion studies from SOLIDWORKS over into Visualize Professional to do these animations.
Yes, sir. Question?
Yeah.
Just notice your assembly is just one assembly with components in it. With the make controller, would it work if you had a final assembly with multiple sub-assemblies in it? It will allow you to do a similar thing like you showed with the animation piece on this example.
So like mates within the subassembly, or? Yep. Sure, one assembly, yeah, with multiple parts. So yeah, this robot in a whole big.
Yeah, let's say you have two sub-assemblies
Sure.
in this part file.
Could you take the mates that are buried within that?
Yeah, could you still do the make controller using, maybe more than one sub-assembly?
Like using the mates that are within that subassembly? Maybe you would have to make those flexible. I'm not 100% sure if that would work, but because like when you have an assembly and take it into a larger one, it's basically treated as one component. So all those mates within that are, it's treating that as just one component. It's not calculating those mates every time, but for performance reasons, trying to help with that. But you can make subassemblies flexible if you want to see that motion of those subassemblies at the top level. So maybe if you make it flexible, I'm not 100% sure on that, but that would be the only way because just like this, it would be rigid, so that those mates wouldn't, I don't think would be there, right? But potentially if you make it flexible. But the last point there, since that is a motion study now, you could take that over into Visualize Professional to create a pretty awesome renderings of that animation. All right, I mentioned there are several mate types available for the mate controller. It's the angle, the distance, limit angle, and limit distance. And the specific types of the slot, the width, and the path. So like if it's floating, we can't, right? If it's centered, we can't. But there's the other options, like if it's a value is defined, right? That we can control that with the mate controller. What this allows you to do, right, is just to better control or position those mates, right? Another thing we mentioned there was that option to create configurations of the different positions with just one click, like if you want to put them on a drawing, right, or something like that. And then create animations, share those videos, and again, for the Visualize Pro users out there, you can take that motion there for those really nice lifelike renderings. Also, just like with that last section there, we talked about, one time, sometimes seeing those angle mates flip, those different angle types, right? What's that option called? The reference entity, right? Good thing to define to kind of help alleviate that. All right. Lastly, let's take a look at. Oh, sorry. Is there a question?
Question on that last part here.
Yeah.
I utilize Composer for animation.
Yeah.
So what's the advantage of doing it this way other than just doing it all in Composer?
Well, it's so totally different animal there, right? That's the nice thing there is you're out of SolidWorks, right? Can't do the things you like. It's definitely much easier to do because you have that keyframe editing and stuff like that in there. There's a lot of other things, awesome things you can do, right, in Composer. Yeah.
So would it be advantageous to like save that in here and then bring it into?
That motion wouldn't come over into Composer. That would not go into Composer, no, because you're creating that whole new SMG file, right? And it's no mates don't exist there, right? It's a whole new file, lighter weight, right? Like file that you're working with and everything. So it's definitely some like overlapping of kind of technology there between those, but yeah, that stuff wouldn't go into Composer now. All right, magnetic mates. So this is really great for like layouts of like a facility or like an office space or something like that. Any like modular type design. So it's a really different mating technique, right? Kind of different than the traditional styles that we've been talking about, right, for the last half hour or so. But let's go ahead and take a look at this. So, end of our journey here, right? Here we have our pirate's room on his ship where he's got all treasure stored, right? So maybe he has a new one that he wants to add now. So this room is laid out so we can see, right, how many treasures he has and everything and how much more room he has on the ship here. So you can imagine that traditional method of how we would, mate these treasure chests in, right? We would mate it to the shelf, then apply some other mates, right? Maybe to the back wall there, or off of the other treasure chests, right? To kind of get those into position, right? That's a lot of zooming in, zooming out, right? To do all that type of stuff. Now, what happens if you want to move that then, right? We have to break all those mates, right? Then go ahead and re-add those in where we then need them. But with magnetic mates, we can just pull them apart and then add them somewhere else, which is really cool. We have those little pink dots there, those connection points where we can toggle between those different ones to kind of position those mates as needed there. We can go ahead in and just easily bring another one in. Just going to drag that in, toggle between the connection points that I want for the position that I want. Do that. So I've just been bringing these in through File Explorer. Right here we'll use the same model there. We can bring in different models as well. I'll drag that smaller treasure chest in there, go between the different connection points to position it how we'd like. And then maybe notice on those other ones, but as we drop those into position, there's this little icon that pops up. And I might not be able to read it, but what that gives you the ability to do is lock that mate. So it locks that magnetic mate down so I click on that one, right? I can't move that one then. So what all has that been adding, right, when we bring in those magnetic mates? So coming over here, right, going down into the mates folder, what's been adding is, see, we added a coincident mate to what's called the ground plane, and then also then the magnetic mate itself. Down here is the one with the little blue dot in the center. That's the one that we locked down, where you can right-click on that, you can unlock that magnetic mate if you want to then be able to move that again. I mentioned the ground plane. Those that are set up ahead of time, right, in this assembly. So if you look over here, right, our ground planes, you can have multiple ground planes. You see I have 2 already set up, right, it's called my bottom shelf and top shelf there. And this time it'll snap, I'm gonna switch that over to make the top shelf my active ground plane. So when I go ahead and bring another treasure chest in here, this time it's gonna snap to that top shelf because that's now our active ground plane, right? So again, these are really great for laying out like large facilities, conveyors, stuff like that. Or maybe you have different floors and stuff like that, right? That maybe you're snapping things to. All right, so we saw what we added here. What's going on? How does it know what those connection points are, right? Stuff like that, right? What's going on with those? So we have to build those in to the models to be able to use those. So let's go ahead and open one of those up and take a look at what's in there. So we have these published references that show up there. You can see these also have then a ground plane in there, and then the different connection points that we have to go in and define. So that one they're already defined, so let's go ahead and just do that on one of them to see how we can do that. So I'm gonna go ahead in and open up another model here that does not have any in there. Oh, yeah.
So once you add those mates here, in the assembly level, once you recognize the magnetic.
That's what those pink dots, yeah.
I didn't see you activating anything.
It's activated, yeah, and we'll see here how you can activate it within this assembly.
It will be the same as a smart mate.
Well, I guess as you can kind of think it sort of works like that. Yeah, sure, but it's different, right? It's the ones that you can pull apart. It's the different type of mate.
Automatically, you recognize it on its own. Is it a smart mate or is it magnetic?
Well, these you have to turn. We'll turn it on, and you'll see here where you can turn off whether it's magnetic or not. Let's see. Did I skip ahead? Oh yeah, this one here we don't have any defined, and this is where we go to do that up under Tools, and it's right here, right under the Asset Publisher. You also can turn the magnetic mate on or off right there. If you depends what you want to do there. So inside the Asset Publisher here, we can go ahead and define our ground plane. You can also define a distance from the ground plane if you want to. Then we can go in and create our connection points. So I'm going to choose the vertex there, and then we choose a direction. Right, so come over here and then choose the direction here. The important thing here is make sure you add the connector. At this point, it hasn't been added yet until you say add the connector to the connection points list here. So now that first one's been added in, and there we selected a point, but we can also select an edge, which we'll do in this one here, and then it'll define it to the midpoint of that selection if you select an edge. So we'll select our direction there, add that connector, as many as you want, right? We'll come over here to the other side and add those same ones in as well. You can flip the direction, all right, if you want, to flip if you need to do that, and then we can add those connections in. Then you might have noticed over in the, when we were in the main assembly, there was like gaps right between those treasure chests as we brought those in, right? They weren't just connecting right to each other. And we can build those in as well. You can see we have these different offset planes here that I just added into this assembly. And we're gonna go ahead and just create a sketch on those planes, and then what we're gonna do is just convert that edge out onto that sketch plane there. Now, you could use the endpoints of that if you wanted to, depending on where you want your connection points. What I'm gonna do is just add a point to the center, or the midpoint of that line there, so I can utilize that for the connection point. So go ahead and do that. Then we'll go to the other side, add that in as well. Go ahead, convert that edge out, add one to the midpoint there. Now, what we can do, right, we have that stuff there. Now we can go ahead in and edit the published references and in the asset publisher there, and I'll go ahead and just add those, add connectors to those points as well. You can add other ones, other ones in too if you need to. Go ahead and add that in for both sides. Make sure, again, adding the connector. And then I'll just save this. Quick save, and then we'll go back over to the main model. So here, with our top shelf still active as the active ground plane, right? We just drag that into the new treasure chest really easily there, right? Go between the different connection points and toggle that in. And just for one last good measure here, what pirate doesn't have a parrot, right? So just, same thing, get other models, right? Just grab that bird cage in and, snap that into place.
So when you're toggling those nodes, how are you toggling?
It's the open bracket and close bracket. Toggle between either on the one you're bringing in or the one you're attaching it to. Right? So yeah, it's the whatever's next to the P, the two next to P. Yeah. Yep. All right.
I see that I can get away with just doing linear patterning with a lot of stuff, because.
A linear pattern at your assembly. Sure, okay.
Now, as far as file size and assembly, is that going to eat up versus doing a linear pattern? Is that way bigger?
Adding the magnetic.
That's a lot of effort, but you don't.
Yeah, it's a line. Again, this is very,
All the benefits.
and that's very unique.
Same piece,
Yeah.
it's something else.
Yes. So yeah, it's
Because I can suppress the ones I didn't want.
through if you're doing them. Yeah, and I would say those are definitely two different use cases. A pattern versus this. This is again just like layout type stuff, right? Where you're snapping things in, moving them around. Yeah, I'd probably size. I'm not quite sure what that would do, but yeah, that's you're talking about. You're adding this thing in, and then I need like 10 of these, right? So I'm adding a list there. Yeah, it would probably that would definitely be quicker, right? I mean, if they're in a position, right, I'd probably still do a pattern, right? But yeah, because that would be you'd have to build all those mate reference or the assets in, right, and then snap. Then you'd be snapping each one individually then too, right? So.
Question.
Yeah.
Let's say you're importing a part from like McMaster's added.
Okay.
Can you do a mate reference on a part you can't specifically edit, or it would be hard to open from there?
Well, you can open those. Yeah.
Well, but like, let's say you're just importing it and you automatically want that piece to have a mate reference on it.
No, you'd have to build that in yourself, right? Yeah, you would once you save that out, I guess, right, and then build that in, right, and then that's your part, right? Whether it's the dumb solid or you can get the full SolidWorks model from them, from McMaster, but then you'd have to build that in. I don't know if there's. I mean, it might have it in there if you get a SolidWorks one. I don't know, but yeah, you would have to just go add that yourself. So just very unique, specific tool, right? But if you're doing that type of layout, right, it avoids that standard mating, right, of having to zoom in, zoom out, make all those small little mates, right, in the large assemblies, right? Eliminate having to break those mates, right, then move the parts around, add those mates in. And then lastly there, speed packs for large assemblies, right, can help with performance, right? A lot of times if you're doing large facility type layouts, and if you're using maybe magnetic matrix or something like that, those are probably pretty big assemblies, right? So within the asset publisher, there actually is you can check box to create a speed pack there. 2023 seems to be giving an error sometimes when you're creating those. 2022, they work great, but there's an SPR for those speed pack options, and so hopefully that'll be back up and running soon. But 2022, they worked great. All right, so that concludes the journey here today. Let's go ahead and just do a quick recap of some of these topics here. Right, so first, right, more quickly and efficiently adding the standard mates, right? Just several different ways of doing that, right? Whichever maybe works best in your workflow. Whether it's the context toolbar and quick mates, utilizing the control key, smart mates, dragging them in from a different file, or using alt right within the assembly, right? For those standard components, right? Building those directly in with those mate references directly into the parts, right? If that's possible, right? The key thing here is you should never have to go up into the command manager, right, to access any of those mates. When those aren't quite enough, right, we have those advanced mates that we talked about. We went over the width mate, the profile center mate, limit mates, slot mates here today, but there's other ones in there as well. And then lastly, if you need to do some mate-based motion, right, or have like those modular layouts, right, give these other mating tools a try, right? Mate controller, magnetic mates, see if they can maybe be beneficial for you there. All right, well, that concludes the presentation here today. Thank you guys all for coming. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of the week.